Are you one of those players that's always changing your crosshair? Today we're going to be talking about what makes a good crosshair and some of the things that you should shy away from. So here, as you can see, I have a crosshair generator map loaded up, and honestly any of these are fine as long as you have something that's like kind of up to date and has like a lot of different options. Let's just start off with mine. So I just have like a very classic dot right now. It's just a standard square dot. I even have a bind that lets me, change the size of it if I want. If you have a small crosshair, the difference is that you can be very precise with your movements. You see someone on a headshot angle, then you're very easily able to, take a pick onto that and to be able to actually get a shot on it, compared to if you have a really huge crosshair. For example, if you have something like this, then it's not going to be as easy to do. If you have a bigger crosshair, I actually think that it helps a lot more with crosshair placement. So if you're using something like this, they'll keep the edge of their crosshair kind of at the end of the wall. So as you can see, as I'm kind of peeking, I'm kind of keeping it at the edge of the wall. And that makes it a little bit easier. If somebody ends up peeking you, then your crosshair is going to be probably a little bit more on them, compared to if you have a dot. If you're doing the same thing, we're keeping your crosshair to the wall, and you're peeking out or he's peeking out, then he might be already kind of in the middle where your crosshair is more towards the wall. And now let's kind of just like talk about some of like the crosshairs that some people are using. This is a very popular crosshair right now. Niko, I know Monesy, Donk, everyone uses this crosshair. They'll either use, a very small variation of it, either like yellow or blue or like a little bit of a green. And I think that this is a very good crosshair. It's a small, precise crosshair where any fight that you had to do is very accurate. Let's go to like Glaive's crosshair, for example. So Glaive has a very big crosshair on here. This is one of the ones that I would consider to be more of a classic crosshair that a lot of players have had. And kind of like the example I was saying, if you're going to be tracing a wall and you're keeping like the right side of your crosshair on it, or the left side, for example, if you're going on this side, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to kill someone that swings out. So if someone did swing out at you, you're going to be way more on the right spot that you should be, compared to if you're tracing it with a very small crosshair. So it's going to be more on you when you use a small crosshair. For example, if you're using Niko's crosshair, you're going to have to be a little bit more off the wall than you would normally. So I completely understand like whichever one you choose. It's just something that you might want to be conscious about. And as you can see, Zywoo on here, he has this other classic crosshair, Rops, Bit, Zywoo. I've seen Niko use it as well. Lots of top players pretty much use this crosshair as well. This is a very, very classic crosshair. And it kind of just adheres to what I was kind of saying about Glaives, where it's a little bit bigger in size. So if you are one of those guys that is, tracing the wall constantly and you're very comfortable with that, then it'll be a little bit easier for you. Now let's talk about style 5 a little bit. So this is Axal's crosshair. And when you're shooting, as you can see, it's going to be expanding a lot. I've used these crosshairs kind of like here and there, maybe for like a day or like even like a scrim, and every time I usually get off of it. And the reason being is that when I'm spraying, I know exactly where it should be during each point of the spray, and it's going to be a lot harder for me personally when I'm using something like Axel's crosshair. Even if it was a little bit smaller, as you can see, like it's a little bit bigger, like you don't really know exactly where the bottom of the spray is. At least I think it's a little bit harder to feel out exactly where it should be. And it's kind of distracting. I feel like I like as little distractions as possible when I'm shooting my gun. I don't like to see like my crosshair like moving as things are happening. I feel like it's very distracting to me. So this is like Simple's old crosshair. Simple has used this crosshair for a super long time, and it's going to be a very small crosshair with a dot in the middle and style 5. So this is one that you'll see a lot of players going to, especially because Simple made it very popular for a while. And I like this a little bit more than Axal's, because at least I know in the center of my crosshair where I can anchor myself for the spray. So as I'm spraying, I kind of understand where my crosshair should be during that point of the spray. And I think that it makes it a lot easier. My recommendation if you're using style 5 is to use a dot in the middle. I think it's easier to anchor where your spray should be, where your crosshair should be during the spray. And now here is Donk's crosshair. So as I was saying, Donk, he uses a variation of Niko's crosshair, but they're usually all kind of like swapping between this crosshair. I've even noticed that Donk will change it from like yellow to light blue depending on the map, just for visibility. And that's going to go into my next point now, which is crosshair visibility is so important. If you can't see your crosshair, then it's going to be a lot harder for you. You're going to have to focus on it that it's not there, or you have to put it on like some wall that you can see it on if it's not a visible crosshair. Let's say that I'm on vertigo here and I have my crosshair that has a dot with an outline. So as you can see, anything here on the wall, because I have an outline, I can see the entire time where my crosshair is. Not that I'm focusing on it, but I don't want it to get lost. And now let's put on the crosshair that most players use right now, which is this very small one. If this is light blue and I put my crosshair into the back wall here, into the back skylight, then it's a lot harder for me to see, at least personally. Let's just say that I'm peeking here and then an enemy peeks out into the in front of this fence up here on the plat. It's so much harder for me to know where my crosshair is, and the only time I'm going to know is if my muscle memory, or just if I peek and I have it on the right spot, then of course it won't be that hard. What I'm saying is you need to have it so you can see your crosshair at all times. And that's when you maybe want to change the color. So as you can see, I just changed it to yellow. You don't have to have the same crosshair for every single map. I think that you just have to focus on visibility and what you kind of want from it. And I can kind of show you some crosshairs that definitely would not be fitting the bill. So let's look at some crosshairs, and this isn't to call anyone out. It just is what it is. Let's look at this one by Smilber. So this is, of course, a tic-tac-toe crosshair. I don't think I'm going to want this if, I have to be top A site looking at pit. This is not going to be very helpful. Not a big fan. That's a thumbs down. Now let's look at this green square. If you're playing from a very far distance, then this crosshair might even be, blocking somebody's head. So this is an issue that I've had with big crosshairs, especially with bigger thicknesses. But let's just say I have my crosshair on this bot here. And of course I know that I'm on him right now, but if I'm in like a duel where both of us are kind of like crouching up and down, then I won't know exactly like when he's crouched. So right now the bot is ducked, and let's just say that I'm in this kind of duel where I'm kind of going back and forth. We're just trying to see who's going to pop up, and then he comes up again. This is kind of like what you should be thinking about when you're choosing a crosshair, is if you're ever in these duels, if you don't know if your crosshair is on him when he's actually peeking, then that's an issue. And now we are on Dust 2. So kind of like the example I was saying before of when you're playing like top A site to pit, it's still pretty much impossible for me to know if I'm on him. I would have to be off of an angle, and I've had to do this before with some crosshairs where I'm off of the target just a little bit. So when they peek, I just have to do like a little bit of a flick so I can at least know that I'm on him, because I can't tell exactly when he's popping up. So this is kind of an example of if you do have a crosshair bind, this makes it a little bit easier. And if I know I'm going to be fighting like these headshot angles, and I'm, maybe I'm using a different crosshair at the time. Maybe I want to use this one right now. Then I can just be like, okay, I'm about to peek like a headshot angle, and I'm, preparing for that, or I know it. Whatever it is, I think that it helps. We have Mr. Euleticals here, and I think Jim Fat also has it on here. I haven't seen him use this. I think it's just a little bit ugly, so I personally wouldn't use a crosshair like this. But in terms of visibility, 10 out of 10 rating, definitely a good-ish crosshair, but I wouldn't be using it for sure. This is actually a crosshair that I haven't really talked about before, which was, a style 2 crosshair. When you're moving, the crosshair is also moving. It changes when you crouch, when you stand, when you jump. I think it's very similar to a style 5 crosshair to me in terms of it being too distracting. If you are new to the game, then it could be beneficial for you to use a crosshair with style 2, because as you can see, I know exactly when I'm moving and I'm inaccurate versus when I stop and I'm accurate again. So you can even check like your counter strafes with this. I think that it's not very needed or necessary. Definitely not something that I'd say is like an advantage over not using it. So now I'm going to end it with kind of like the crosshairs that I'd say are pretty standard, and you'll see like most players using some variation of these. And this one that I have on here, it might be a kind of a big size, but if we put it down to 2.5, this is something that looks a lot more manageable, and it's not really going to be blocking too much. A pretty standard crosshair, I'd say. You see this in a lot of different games. I think that you can't go wrong with it. Next one, of course, is the dot. Any variation of the size of it is definitely fine, and you can even change it and have different types of dots. This is just what I prefer since it's a little bit easier to see, but I think that you definitely cannot go wrong with a dot. And like I said, lots of like really top players are using this right now with like Niko, Monesy, Donk. I think you can't really go wrong. I think that it just fits everything in terms of you know, small, precise. I think that it's just very clean. Like, you can't really go wrong with any variation of the thickness of it either. So these are the majority of the crosshairs that I would say that people use, and why I kind of have like a rolling binds of all of them, so I can swap between whichever ones that I'm feeling like. I see lots of the best players kind of sticking around these ones, so I'll be doing the same. I think that they feel good, and definitely give them a try if you haven't already. Let me know what else you guys would like to see in the comments. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.